Van Halen. Hey y'all, welcome to Sleep with Rock Stars, the Gen X sleep podcast that helps you unwind with a calm, mellow reading from Wikipedia about the music we still love. I'm your host, Sloane Spencer, here to help you let the day go and drift off. Before we start, take a second to rate, and review the show. And make sure you subscribe wherever you listen. It's quick, it helps a lot, and it keeps the good vibes coming. Now, get comfortable. Take a slow breath in and out. Let your thoughts settle. No need to fix anything. Check anything, or scroll anything. Don't even say anything. Just listen. Let the sound, the story, and the music of our generation ease you toward rest. This is Sleep with Rock Stars. You deserve a good night's sleep, or whatever. Van Halen was an American rock band formed in Pasadena, California in 1972. Credited with restoring hard rock to the forefront of the music scene, Van Halen was known for their energetic live performances and the virtuosity of their guitarist, Eddie Van Halen. From 1974 to 1985, Van Halen consisted of guitarist, keyboardist, backing vocalist, and primary songwriter Eddie Van Halen, his brother, drummer Alex Van Halen, lead vocalist David Lee Roth, and bassist Michael Anthony. Upon its release in 1978, the band's self-titled debut album reached number 19 on the Billboard 200 and sold over 10 million copies in the United States, achieving a diamond certification by the Recording Industry Association of America, RIAA. By 1982, the band had released 4 more albums: Van Halen 2, 1979, Women and Children First, 1980, Fair Warning, 1981, and Diver Down, 1982, all of which have been certified multi-platinum. By the early 1980s, Van Halen was among the most commercially successful rock acts. The album 1984, released in the eponymous year, was a commercial success with U.S. sales of 10 million copies and 4 successful singles. Its lead single, Jump, was the band's only #1 single on the Billboard Hot 100. In 1985, Roth left the band to embark on a solo career and was replaced by former Montrose lead vocalist Sammy Hagar. With Hagar, the group released 4 U.S. #1 multi-platinum albums over the course of 11 years. 5150 in 1986, OU812 in 1988, For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge in 1991, and Balance in 1995. The group released a double platinum live album, Live, Right Here, Right Now, in 1993. Hagar left the band in 1996, shortly before the release of the band's first greatest hits collection, Best Of, Volume 1. Former Extreme frontman Gary Cherone replaced Hagar and recorded the commercially unsuccessful album Van Halen 3 with the band in 1998, before parting ways in 1999. Van Halen went on hiatus until reuniting with Hagar in 2003 for a worldwide tour in 2004, and the double disc Greatest Hits Collection, The Best of Both Worlds, 2004. Hagar again left Van Halen after the tour in 2004. Roth returned in 2006, but Anthony was replaced on bass guitar by Eddie's son, Wolfgang Van Halen. In 2012, the band released their final studio album, A Different Kind of Truth, which was critically and commercially successful. It was also the band's first album with Roth in 28 years, and the only one to feature Wolfgang. Eddie was diagnosed with cancer in 2001 and died of the disease on October 6, 2020. A month after his father's death, Wolfgang confirmed that Van Halen had disbanded. As of March 2019, Van Halen is 20th on the RIAA's list of best-selling artists in the United States. The band has sold 56 million albums in the US and more than 80 million worldwide, making them one of the best-selling groups of all time. As of 2007, Van Halen is one of only 5 rock bands with 2 studio albums to sell more than 10 million copies in the United States, and is tied for the most multi-platinum albums by an American band. Additionally, Van Halen has charted 13 #1 hits on Billboard's mainstream rock chart. VH1 ranked the band 7th on its list of the 100 greatest hard rock artists. History: 1972 through 1977. Formation and early history. The Van Halen brothers were born in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Alex Van Halen in 1953 and Eddie Van Halen in 1955. Sons to Dutch musician Jan Van Halen and Indonesian-born Indo Eugenia van Beers. The family moved to Pasadena, California in 1962. Eddie began learning classical piano by ear and became so proficient he won an annual piano recital contest 2 or 3 years in a row, despite never mastering sight-reading sheet music. The brothers began playing music together in the 1960s, with Eddie on drums and Alex on guitar. However, while Ed was delivering newspapers to pay off his drum set, Alex secretly developed a passion and proficiency at them. Eventually, out of frustration and brotherly competition, Eddie told Alex, "Okay, you play drums and I'll play your guitar." The Van Halen brothers formed their first band, the Broken Combs, in 1964. As they gained popularity playing backyard parties and local high school functions, they changed their name first to the Trojan Rubber Company, then, in 1972, to Genesis. Later, to Mammoth, when they discovered Genesis was already in use by a major label British band. At this time, the band included Eddie on both vocals and lead guitar, and friend Mark Stone on bass. They rented a sound system from Indiana-born Pasadena transplant David Lee Roth for $10 per night. Roth fronted a local R&B-influenced rock band, the Red Ball Jets. Roth's Uncle Manny owned Café Wah in New York City until 1968. Partly to save money, they invited Roth to join as their lead vocalist despite previous unconvincing auditions. Ultimately, Roth's charismatic Jim Dandy approach would be both an artistic foil to Eddie's circumspect guitar prodigy talents, as well as allowing Eddie to focus his energies on song composition. In 1973, Mammoth changed its name to Van Halen. According to Roth, this was his idea. He felt it was a name that held long-term identity, artistic and marketing advantages like Santana. They continued to play Pasadena, San Bernardino, and Venice at clubs, festivals, backyard parties, and city parks like Hamilton, drawing up to 2,000 people. Traffic jams and noise complaints to the local police often ensued, as far away as San Pedro. Van Halen subsequently played clubs in Los Angeles and West Hollywood to growing audiences, increasing their popularity through self-promotion, passing out flyers at local high schools. This tenacious self-promotion soon built them an auspicious, loyal area following. By 1974, Roth had been in the band for about a year, and they decided to replace the ambivalent Stone, who was unsure about a career in music. Michael Anthony Sobolewski, a Pasadena College music classmate of Eddie's, joined the group after an all-night jam session. He had sung and played bass in a number of less successful Arcadia backyard party bands, including Snake. Although he was hesitant, his bandmate in Snake encouraged him to seize this opportunity. Also, in 1974, the band had a major break when it was hired to play regularly on the Sunset Strip at Gazzari's. The Doors had broken there in the late 1960s. Owner Bill Gazzari had previously claimed Van Halen was too loud for the venue. However, their new managers, Mark Algori and Mario Miranda, took over the club's hiring and booked them through 1976. By the spring of 1975, they were the regular Tuesday night band at Myron's Ballroom. They had succeeded in becoming a staple of the Los Angeles music scene during the mid-1970s, playing at clubs like the Whiskey A Go-Go on Sunset Strip. All the club gig success led to the need for a demo tape, which was recorded at Cherokee Studios in Northridge, where Steely Dan had recently completed an LP at the time. Rodney Bingenheimer saw Van Halen at Gazzari's in the summer of 1976 and enticed Gene Simmons of Kiss to see them. Impressed to action, Simmons produced a 29-track Van Halen demo tape entitled Zero at Village Recorder Studios in Los Angeles, and with post-production overdubs completed at Electric Lady Studios in New York. Simmons suggested changing their name to Daddy Longlegs. However, a very disappointed Simmons could do no more once Kiss management opined that Van Halen had no chance of making it. 1977 through 1985. Breakthrough and initial success with David Lee Roth. Doug Messenger, Van Morrison's bandleader guitarist, knowing that Ted Templeman was looking for a Guitar Hero act, had seen Van Halen at the Starwood in Hollywood and placed a number of calls to Warner Records for Ted to check them out. I don't know if it was 4 calls or 10, but I knew this was exactly the act Ted wanted. So on a horrendously rainy night in mid-1977, Warner Brothers executive Mo Austin and producer Ted Templeman saw Van Halen perform at the Starwood in Hollywood. It was Van Halen's first booking at the Starwood and the first time they hired their own roadies. We wanted to come on with a little class, and we couldn't be seen setting up our own stuff in Hollywood, explained Roth. Although the audience was negligible, Messenger claims only a barmaid and himself were there until Austin and Templeman arrived. The Warner Brothers reps were so impressed that they wrote a letter of intent on a napkin, and within a week met at a local diner with the band, their future manager Marshall Burrell, nephew of comedian Milton Berle, and Warner touring manager Noel Monk, who had just guided the Sex Pistols across the United States. According to Noel Monk's book, the band's car had broken down en route to the meeting at the diner, and rather than leave the Warner Brothers reps waiting and appeared to be an irresponsible band, the members of Van Halen actually ran the remaining distance of several miles to arrive only slightly late. Warner offered the band a 2-album recording contract, one that heavily favored Warner, paying the band 70 cents per unit album sold, a deal that would leave the band over $1 million in debt at the conclusion of their first supporting tour as the opening act for Journey and Ronnie Montrose. The group recorded their debut album at Sunset Sound Recorders Studio from mid-September to early October 1977, recording guitar parts for 1 week and then vocals for 2 additional. All of the tracks were laid down with little overdubbing or multitracking. Minor mistakes were purposely left on the record, and a very rudimentary instrument setup was used to give the record a live feel. During this time, they continued to play various venues in Southern California, including concerts at the Pasadena Convention Center, produced by their promoter and impresario Steve Tortomasi. Van Halen reached number 19 on the Billboard pop music charts, one of rock's most commercially successful debuts. It was regarded as both a heavy metal and hard rock album. The album includes songs now regarded as Van Halen classics, like Runnin' with the Devil, and the guitar solo, Eruption, which showcased Eddie's use of a technique known as finger tapping, leading into what became the band's first single, a cover of You Really Got Me. The band toured for 9 months more, opening for Black Sabbath and establishing a reputation for their performances. The band's chemistry was based on Eddie Van Halen's guitar technique and David Lee Roth's charisma. The band returned to the studio for 2 weeks in late 1978 to record Van Halen 2, a 1979 LP similar in style to their debut. This record yielded the band's first hit single, Dance the Night Away, which peaked at 15 on Billboard's Hot 100. Over the next 4 years, the band toured non-stop, never taking more than 2 weeks to record an album. Their album, Women and Children First, was released in 1980 and further cemented Van Halen's platinum-selling status to Warner Brothers. It yielded 2 hit singles, In the Cradle Will Rock and Everybody Wants Some. For the first time, an amplified Wurlitzer electric piano was used to complement Eddie's guitar. In 1981, during the recording of Fair Warning, Eddie's desire for a darker, more complex songs in minor keys was at odds with Roth's pop tastes and style. Nonetheless, Roth and veteran Warner Brothers rock producer Ted Templeman acquiesced to Eddie's wishes on this album. Doug Messenger recalled how Ed and engineer Don Landy re-recorded the Unchained solo hours after Ted stormed out of the studio. This darker album only reached platinum status after $250,000 of payola pushed it up nationwide from 400,000 copies. Planning to release a cover single, then take a hiatus, Roth and Eddie agreed upon a remake of the 1960s Roy Orbison song, Oh Pretty Woman, which peaked at 12 on Billboard Top 100. Oh Pretty Woman's comical video helped its success, but was also banned by MTV. Due to much pressure from Warner Brothers, the hiatus was canceled and the Diver Down LP was squeezed out, again with 2 weeks' time. Roth's preference for pop covers prevailed this time, and with Eddie's synthesizer and guitar riffs, Diver Down charted much better. The band earned a spot in the Guinness Book of World Records for the highest paid single appearance of a band, $1.5 million for a 90-minute set at Steve Wozniak's 1983 US Festival, a show that both Noel Monk and Doug Messenger considered artistically a disaster, Roth having consumed alcohol to the point of forgetting lyrics. Despite this return to form, Roth and Eddie's differences continued, and this caused friction with other band members. Billy Sheehan, after his band Dallas completed a tour with Van Halen, claims he was approached by Eddie to replace Michael Anthony. The reasons for this were never completely clear to Sheehan, as nothing came of it. During this time, Eddie contributed the score and instrumental songs to the film The Wild Life. The score was laden with drum machine and hinted at sounds and riffs that would come with their next 2 albums. 1984 and 5150. 1984, released on January 9, 1984, was a commercial success, going 5 times platinum after a year of release. Recorded at Eddie's newly built 5150 studios, the album featured keyboards, which had only been used sporadically on previous albums. The lead single, Jump, featured a synthesizer hook and anthemic lyrics inspired by news coverage of a suicidal jumper. It became the band's first and only #1 pop hit, with Roth garnering them a Grammy nomination. Other singles included Panama, #13 US, I'll Wait, also #13 US, and Hot for Teacher. 3 of the songs had popular music videos on MTV. 1984 was praised by critics and peaked at #2 on the Billboard charts behind Michael Jackson's Thriller, which notably had a guitar solo by Eddie on Beat It. Following the 1984 tour, Roth decided to quit and form a new band. Group members have given different reasons for the split, but all were firmly rooted in control of the band's sound, artistic direction, singles released, and pace. Roth was concerned about Eddie playing music outside of Van Halen. Roth was also launching a successful solo career with 2 hit cover songs off his Crazy from the Heat EP, a remake of the Beach Boys classic California Girls, number 3 US, and a pairing of the classic Al Jolson standard Just a Gigolo and I Ain't Got Nobody, number 12 US, which had previously been paired together by Louis Prima. Roth was offered a $20 million film deal for a script titled Crazy from the Heat. Roth hoped Van Halen would contribute to the soundtrack. However, the film deal fell through when CBS Pictures was reorganized in 1986. 1985 through 1996, Sammy Hagar era. Eddie invited Patti Smythe of Scandal to replace Roth, but she declined. Daryl Hall was offered the lead vocal position in 1985, but also declined. Hall verified to Hagar, his musical guest in the May 2015 season premiere of Live from Daryl's House, that he was approached after a Hall & Oates concert. Eddie was introduced to Sammy Hagar in 1985 via their mutual car mechanic. Hagar was the former frontman for the hard rock group Montrose, and a solo artist coming off a very successful year. His hit single, I Can't Drive 55, came from his 1984 album VOA, produced by Ted Templeman, who had produced Montrose's first album, Montrose, as well as all of Van Halen's albums up to that point. Hagar agreed to sing as well as play rhythm guitar. When Warner Brothers president Mo Austin came to the band's 5150 studios to hear the band's progress, Hagar said the band played Why Can't This Be Love live with Eddie on keyboards, after which Austin proclaimed, I smell money. The 1986 Van Halen album 5150 was a huge hit, becoming the band's first #1 album on the Billboard charts, driven by the keyboard-dominated singles Why Can't This Be Love, number 3 US, Dreams, and Love Walks In, top 30 US. To further introduce the new era for the band, a new Van Halen logo was put on the cover. It retained elements of the original, but with lines extending from either side of VH wrapped around and formed a ring. Following the release of the 5150 album, the 5150 tour was launched to support it across North America. Footage was released on VHS and Laserdisc as Live Without a Net. The band minimized the use of pre-Hagar Van Halen songs in the set. All 4 studio albums produced during this period reached #1 on the Billboard pop music charts, and 17 singles breached the top 12 of the mainstream rock tracks chart. During that era, a single taken from 1988's OU812, When It's Love, reached the top 5, peaking at #5. In addition, Van Halen was nominated for 2 Grammy Awards. The band won the 1992 Grammy Award for Best Hard Rock Performance with Vocal for the album For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. Van Halen continued to enjoy success throughout the mid-1990s. They recorded a live album and concert film at 2 1992 FUCK tour shows in Fresno, California, called Live, Right Here, Right Now. During the FUCK and the live album supporting Live, Right Here, Right Now tour, Night Rangers Alan Fitzgerald played keyboards off stage every night, allowing Eddie to concentrate on guitar. Fitzgerald returned to play offstage keyboards on the 2004, 2007, and 2012 tours. In 1995, Van Halen released the album Balance and supported Bon Jovi on their European Summer Stadium Tour. The Balance Tour was nicknamed the Ambulance Tour by the band due to an amount of physical ailments, as Hagar had throat problems during the first concerts. Eddie suffered a hip injury caused by avascular necrosis, and Alex wore a neck brace due to ruptured vertebrae. During the recording of songs for the film Twister, escalating tension between Hagar and the Van Halen brothers boiled over, and Hagar departed June 1996. Hagar claimed he was fired, and Eddie claimed Hagar quit. The band had recorded Humans Being, a song for which Eddie, unhappy with Hagar's lyrics, retitled the song and wrote the melody. This upset Hagar, and when they were to record a second song for the soundtrack, Hagar was in Hawaii for the birth of his child. With Hagar back in Hawaii and against the idea of doing the project, but having another song left to contribute, the Van Halen brothers alone recorded the instrumental Respect the Wind. The performance, which featured Eddie playing guitar and Alex playing keyboards, was nominated for Best Rock Instrumental Performance at the 39th Annual Grammy Awards. The band was working on a compilation album. This led to conflicts with Hagar and the group's new manager, Ray Daniels, Ed Loeffler's replacement, and Alex Van Halen's former brother-in-law. Even though it was Loeffler who had renewed their contract with Warner Brothers Records and had added a greatest hits album option years before, Hagar was reluctant to work on a compilation album before a new album came out. But if the rest of the band and Daniels insisted on going forward with one at the time, his preference was that it should include only Roth-era songs, or, as a third choice, that 2 volumes should be released, one of Roth-era songs and one of Hagar-era songs. During this same period, competing personal priorities and creative differences contributed to increasing interpersonal tensions with the band, particularly between Eddie and Hagar. The relationship between Hagar and Van Halen broke down. 1996. Temporary reunion with Roth. Roth called Eddie to discuss what tracks would be included on a planned Van Halen compilation, work on which had actually begun before Hagar's departure. They got along well, and Eddie invited him up to his house studio. Shortly afterwards, Roth re-entered the studio with the band and producer Glenn Ballard. 2 songs from those sessions were added to the band's Best Of Volume 1 and released as singles to promote it. In September, Van Halen was asked to present an award at the 1996 MTV Video Music Awards. They agreed, and on September 4th, 1996, the 4 original members of Van Halen made their first public appearance together in over 11 years. This helped bring the compilation to number 1 on the U.S. album charts. However, unknown to Roth, Eddie and Alex were still auditioning other singers, including Mitch Malloy. The band's appearance on the 1996 MTV Video Music Awards fueled reunion speculation. Several weeks after the awards show, it was discovered that Roth was out of Van Halen again. Roth released a statement that Van Halen misled him into thinking they were seriously considering bringing him back into the band, and that he had made clear to them beforehand that he did not want to do the awards show unless they were actually reuniting. The next day, the Van Halen brothers and Anthony released their own statement, denying they had in any way led Roth to believe they were planning to bring him back into the band. Eddie later recounted that at the MTV Video Music Awards appearance, he was embarrassed and outraged by Roth's antics while on camera behind Beck, who was giving an acceptance speech for the award that Van Halen had presented to him. At a backstage press conference, press queries about a reunion tour were met with Eddie saying that he needed a hip replacement and would have to record an entire new studio album before any tour. Roth told Eddie to avoid talking about negative things like his hip, and the two almost came to blows. 1996 through 2000, Gary Cherone era. Van Halen's next lead singer was Gary Cherone, former frontman of Boston-based band Extreme, a group which had enjoyed some popular success in the early 1990s. The result was the album Van Halen 3. Many songs were longer and more experimental than Van Halen's earlier work. It was a notable contrast from their previous material, with more focus on ballads than traditional rock songs. How Many, Say I, with Eddie on vocals. Sales were poor by the band's standards, only reaching a gold certification, despite the album peaking at number 4 on the U.S. charts. However, Van Halen 3 did produce the hit Without You, and another album track, Fire in the Hole, appeared on the Lethal Weapon 4 soundtrack. The album was followed by a tour. The 3 tour saw Van Halen playing in countries they did not visit before, including first visits to Australia and New Zealand. Without You acquired number 1 place on the Billboard mainstream rock charts in 1998, the 13th song of theirs to do so. This made them the band with the most mainstream rock number 1s. Van Halen returned to the studio and in early 1999 started work on a new album. For the sessions, they brought on Danny Korchmar to produce. Working titles of songs included Left for Dead, River Wide, Say Uncle, You Wear It Well, More Than Yesterday, I Don't Miss You Much, Love Divine, and From Here, Where Do We Go? More than 20 songs were rumored to have been written. The project was never released, with Cherone leaving the band amicably in November 1999, citing musical differences and personal issues that he was going through. None of the material from these sessions has been released, and the band released no new material until 3 new songs were written and recorded with Hagar, which were included on the 2004 Best of Both Worlds compilation. Cherone stated that he believed if he and the band had toured first and then recorded an album, they might have creatively gelled more and the album would have turned out better. Touring with Cherone had proven disappointing in terms of attendance. Eddie later admitted that Warner Brothers had forced his hand in parting with Cherone. Unlike the previous two singers, there was reportedly no bad blood behind the breakup, and Cherone remained in contact and on good terms with Van Halen. As when Hagar left, speculation resumed on a Roth reunion. This episode of Sleep with Rock Stars was recorded October 31st, 2025, from the Wikipedia entry about the band Van Halen, which can be found at en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Van_Halen.